see if this works.
Yep, we're
You see
seeing.
the full slide?
Yes.
Okay, good.
And just so everyone knows, this session is being recorded. So if there's any information that you don't wish to be memorialized in a recording, please don't bring it up. Just, for everybody's safekeeping here. So Willem, if you are ready, I will let you hop at it.
Okay, definitely. And of course, to hook into that bridge that you provided, we first have to show always the safe harbor slide, right?
Yes.
If you are doing anything with ServiceNow on the webinars, you will see this slide many times. So if you want, you can screenshot it and read it. But maybe first starting off with who am I to talk to you about the topics of upgrading. I'm Willem Zeiller. I'm a certified master architect and also a 4 times most valued professional of ServiceNow. I work for Platformation and I was asked by Britta to help her talk about the how to upgrade, and especially with Xanadu in our site to provide you with some helpful tips, tricks, tools, and maybe answers to your questions as well. So if you have questions, post them, and Britta will probably help me get them answered. I have over 10 years experience in IT. A huge part of that is in the ServiceNow ecosystem, and I've done different roles. I'm currently lead architect in also the AI strategic capability group, our subject matter experts, and HRSD, and involved in many upgrades over the years. Then what are we going to speak about? Now, I told you a little bit about myself. And the topics that we are providing is, first I'm going to share some helpful tools, why it's important to upgrade your plugins as well, especially with the Xanadu approach, and what kind of approaches you have, and then enhancing the upgrade process itself. And of course, this is interactive, so if there's any questions popping up in the meantime, the topic order might change depending on what has the preference. Are there any questions so far?
Not seeing anything in the Q&A just yet.
Okay, good. Then starting off with the first helpful tool that I was lucky enough to experience. If you get the opportunity to attend Knowledge or also the events at the World Forum, they, even before Xanadu was released, already showed a sneak peek, of course, again with the big safe harbor statement. But a lot of what is now announced in Xanadu was already discussed and shown at Knowledge. And I think ServiceNow has the intention of sharing those things early on. So you can already prepare a bit of what's probably coming. The next thing is, of course, when the release is announced, there are usually preliminary release notes and then the final release notes. So these release notes for the Xanadu release are now live, and of course we will share the link to that as well. You can use GenAI to summarize a lot of these functionalities as well. So if you're not that much of a reader, ServiceNow provides you with AI tools to summarize that and quickly get to the insights that you want. Of course, reach out to your partner. Reach out on the SNUG, the ServiceNow user group, to other ServiceNow platform owners or other companies that are doing the upgrade, maybe in a similar sector or industry. For developers, specifically the developer meetups. For the Netherlands, we have a really nice one every quarter in Amsterdam. And then, if that's okay with you, Britta, of course, a shameless plug to YouTube. I have my own YouTube channel where I'm accompanied with some of the other MVPs talking about a range of topics, but also the Xanadu release. And that goes for more and more people in the ServiceNow ecosystem, where we will share on our channels also tips, tricks, new functionalities, sometimes deep dives. So these are the unofficial channels, of course. And of course, you have the ServiceNow community channel, which is by ServiceNow, the @ServiceNow channel, where they post also the official, where we saw Lawrence skating into the Xanadu release, where you can find demos on new Xanadu functionalities. So think again, if you're not much of a reader, ServiceNow has got you covered there as well with a lot of nice demos and visuals. And then one other thing is the upgrade planning checklist. And I think that's also something that I like to use, even though I did upgrades many times. It's easy to miss something. And to be honest, it's also satisfying to check things off, right? As you go, seeing more and more checkboxes. So it's just a fun activity. And especially if you have a big team, a big platform, maybe covering several teams, this checklist is a good start. And of course, think about expanding this with your own runbook and steps to make sure that at the next Xanadu release goes smooth. And any issue that you run in, but we will cover that later, you can update that runbook as well to keep enhancing that checklist. And of course, ServiceNow will do that every release as well. You see here the upgrade planning checklist for Xanadu. Maybe pausing a bit for questions or experiences on any of these helpful tools or resource links.
Yeah, and if anybody wants to talk, just raise your hand. I haven't seen any come in yet, but I have read a couple of a book that was just about checklists, honestly, and it was talking about how important a checklist is so that you don't miss any steps. And one of the examples they gave was airlines, and there was a terrible airline accident back in the 70s due to the pilots not following the checklist. Not that you're going to have a catastrophe with ServiceNow, but it just goes to show the importance of checklists and why they're so helpful.
Yeah.
But I'm not seeing any raised hand. Sorry.
Oh, no. I also heard talking about airplanes that people even in the airplane, the pilots say the things that are doing out loud, just to check to be more actively involved in the action. So maybe that's also a tip that we can do while upgrading, saying all the checks that you're doing out loud to the rest of your team.
That's right. Make sure you're not just doing it by rote. So,
okay. Let's move on to the next slide of helpful tools. And this is where I built them up a bit. So it's animating. And I'm helping you as well to say a bit of the order that I think makes sense to me, where you can use these tools. So you have the Clone Admin Console. That's a plugin available in the ServiceNow store. We also share the link to that, where you can manage your clones. And what we advise, depending on your development suite, if you have production and development, then you want to clone back production to development. If you have a more elaborate development suite, including maybe test and acceptance, then of course you also want to clone over production back to test and acceptance. And the reason why we do that is you want a development suite that is as production-like as possible. And what do I mean with production-like as possible? It does, of course, mean that you still want to think about sensitive data. On production, you have a lot less admins and developers being able to have higher privileges, right, to see more. So the data on production, you not necessarily want to clone back over development, where you have a lot more developers. So think about HR transactional data, HR profiles, security incidents, that kind of data you might not want to clone back. And that's also what you can manage in that Clone Admin Console. You can set up the clone rules to say what do you want to include in the clone and what do you want to exclude. So that is preparing your developer suite. And then when it comes to the upgrade, Upgrade Center helps you preview, monitor, and plan the upgrade itself. So you can already, without running the upgrade itself, you can preview it. while it's upgrading, you can monitor it, and you can plan when you want to execute it. And you also have an overview of historically your upgrades that took place. So far, I've seen many customers already either with different toolings do these similar steps. And one thing that I think more and more customers should be using is Instant Scan. Instant Scan is provided by ServiceNow and allows you to build your own checks. Now, if you don't know where to start, ServiceNow has also built their own checks, and they offer that as a health scan. And what I also see, I work for a partner called Platformation, but many other partners have also built their own scan suite on top of Instant Scan that you can run. And the way I like to use it is before we run the upgrade, run the scans and get an entry score result. So it gives you a score 1 to 100 on how your instance is performing. For example, on performance, on upgradability, maintainability, a lot of scores, depending on what you've set up. And then you do the upgrade, and then you can run the new test again, compare the results. And what we've also discussed is it's a good opportunity to view, and with the Xanadu release, maybe you have already some custom built applications. It was necessary for your organization, added value, but now it might be available via ServiceNow in the Xanadu release. So it might be a good point that you say, hey, for that custom application, we're going back to box. So whatever we've built, we're now migrating and starting using what ServiceNow from the Xanadu release on offers out of the box. That also would show in that new benchmarking score, right? Less customization means your instance health is improving. So that's also nice to report back to your stakeholders. Because, hey, the Xanadu release not only added new functionality, but it made the platform maybe more stable or reduced technical debt. And then, of course, that new benchmarking score also gives you a scoring to compare whenever you run Instant Scan after a big development. If you check update sets of developers to compare against. You say, hey, this was right after the Xanadu upgrade. 2 months, 6 months later, the score is improved, or hopefully not, but maybe declined. Okay, Britta, do you know if the support for automated test framework is also in this call?
Alinka has not popped in yet.
Okay, no worries. I think I can at least talk about this a bit more. Automated test framework, or ATF. We have an expert that can answer maybe way more questions than I can about this. But automated test framework, ATF, the name says it, allows you to automatically test. So your regression testing, if you say your IT service management processes, for example, you want to regularly check that. And of course, you can manual test, but it takes a lot of time, a lot of people on keyboard. And automated test framework, you can build your own tests, which is of course nice, especially if you have that custom application. Maybe you were not able to migrate it, or it wasn't in Xanadu, then still you can run those automated tests that you've built. For a lot of the out-of-the-box regression testing, ServiceNow already has ATF scripts available. So if you install the ATF plugin, there's already a lot of tests available that ServiceNow provides you with. So for example, your incident management process, if you kept that as out of the box as possible, a lot of the basic checks are already there. And of course, you can tweak the existing ones as well. So if you say, hey, we have a different state in between that process, you can tweak it. Any questions on any of these tools yet, or how to use them?
So we have one from Dennis. He says he understands it's not recommended to use ATF in production. How can best similar results be achieved in production?
Okay, that's a good one. And indeed, maybe to elaborate why it's not recommended to run it in production. And I think that goes for every testing, right? Throughout this, and that comes a bit in the manual testing that's in the one click away, but that's more on the tooling. There's still a lot of manual testing. But the quicker you're able to uncover any test findings in your development street, the cheaper it is to fix. And what do I mean by that? If you have new development or you're doing the upgrade test on development, but it can also be a developer building something new. If you find that already while it's still on development, at the first time you touch it and you find it and then fix it, it's only one person that has touched it, so it's cheaper. If you find it in test, then it's already the developer that has seen it, touched it, worked on it. You had to install it on test. Somebody else looked at it, so it's two people already, increasing the cost. And then acceptance, increasing the cost again, and then in production. And production, that also includes maybe a change freeze, a rollback if it's in a mitigating action. So it's quite costly to run those tests only on production. And then to get similar results, and that's why we use the cloning. If you clone back production to acceptance, and maybe you set the acceptance environment, what I usually see, they clone back a bit more production-like data, and maybe anonymized data, but that you can almost one-to-one run the same ATFs as you would on production. So acceptance and production, if they are 99% similar, then all the automated test findings that you would have found on production, you already find on acceptance. And of course, on test and development, you were also able to find a lot of the findings already. So that's my advice. That's why we don't wait till production and do elaborate testing there. Okay.
And you got a thumbs up for that.
Thank you. And that leaves us to the last step, where we say, okay, my opinion is any testing that you can automate, consider doing that, right? Because the ATF is way more consistent in testing than a manual tester can ever do. You can have the best manual tester in the world, but they're still human, right? And a computer or the ATF executed always in the same order. And that can result in either the ATF says, hey, this is red, it's not matching, so you need to fix something, or update the automated test that you have created, because maybe the process has changed, right? And in manual testing, that gives a lot less control. But what enhances that is keeping track of the manual testing. One, because that gives you the opportunity, because you know how many manual tests you're doing, to gradually start automating those tests. And let's say there's 10 things that we manually test the Xanadu release. Next time, when we upgrade to the new version, we want only 8 things to manual test, right? We can automate 2 additional things. So keeping track of that, that's good. And then the second one, we spoke about checklists, checking things off, making sure they are done. It gives you traceability. Have we ran all the manual tests that we need to do? Now, ServiceNow has 2 test management apps, version 1.0 and 2.0. And it sounds like it's an upgraded version, one of the other. But what we found out is test management 1.0 is mainly used for acceptance testing, keeping track of that. So a lot of the app is mainly focused on that. And test management 2.0 is really tailored to unit testing. So the combination of those two really helps you keep track of your manual testing. And what I see in common practice is using Excel sheet and Word files. We all know that happens sometimes, but you can imagine having that data in ServiceNow. It's a quick step to ATF. You have the reporting capabilities, and if you have more advanced intelligence capabilities like predictive intelligence, reporting, can give you additional insights as well.
And Oli Inca from our product team, who's in platform area, has jumped on the call here. If anybody has any specific questions around ATF, he's happy to try to field those, because obviously we understand that using these testing tools can really help you make your upgrades go more quickly and more efficiently. So don't be shy. If you have any questions around ATF, drop them in the Q&A, and Monique will be happy to answer any of those. But it looks like either there's no questions or everybody's shy. So,
Okay, no worries. And we will also monitor the chat, so any questions popping up, and we can also happily answer them in writing after this call.
Yep.
So from helpful tools, I think this also throughout the process helps you quite a lot. And then one thing I also see is, especially in Xanadu, where things are packaged. Of course, in the Xanadu upgrade, but we also see that more and more is available as a store plugin, which for ServiceNow has the added benefit they can release more frequently cool new innovations, update apps more easily, but it also means that it's important to keep your plugins up to date. And one thing we see is sometimes it's first you upgrade to Xanadu, because a lot of the newest upgrade plugin versions are dependent on you being on the Xanadu release. So if they release a new version, they say, hey, the version that you need to be on is Xanadu. So first upgrade to Xanadu, and then check the newest versions of those plugins. Check if there's additional plugins available. As we said, in Xanadu, there might be a lot of new functionality. And then also check, do you want to check if there's any new ServiceNow plugins, of course. Those are directly connected that we see in the Xanadu release. But also sometimes you have partner plugins or third-party plugins that you also want to upgrade. Because they are also working, they usually get early access to Xanadu, and they will make sure that the newest versions of their apps are compatible with Xanadu. So after you upgrade to Xanadu, it also makes sense, upgrade your plugins. And of course, all the steps that we spoke about, testing to make sure. Of course, the partners and ServiceNow tested those plugins as well, but you want to make sure that they work in your environment as well. And what we sometimes also see is that you also already upgrade to the latest version, in this case, the latest Washington version. You can already do a lot of testing there. And my advice would be upgrade and check your plugins regularly if you're on the most recent version, because as I said, new functionality will be added sometimes to these plugins as well. Upgrade to Washington, do some testing there already. And then after the Xanadu upgrade to the latest version of the plugin. That makes the delta between your previous version and the newest version a lot smaller, so requires less testing and less issues.
Is there any questions around that? Here we have one from Graham, and Pamela, we will get back to you. Graham says the one thing we found difficult to keep up with is the numerous plugin updates, as we are a fairly large organization using the platform. Can be very difficult at times to be constantly testing these updates. Is there a best practice model for managing those?
Yeah, that's a very good question. And
Yes.
especially the sizing, right? That's always a consultant's answer. It depends. It depends on the number of plugins. But why we mentioned that in this upgrade webinar is because I think at least the best practice that works for everybody is schedule it at least around your upgrades, because then you have 2 moments in time that you look at your plugins and say, hey, are they up to date? What I see in larger organizations, we also spoke about a few slides back on cloning back production to your development suite. I also advise customers to do that more frequently than just during the upgrade. But of course, a good starting point is at least do it, let's say, twice a year with the upgrades. You clone back everything. The same goes twice a year, we can upgrade the plugins. The best thing you can do, of course, is having more frequent plugin upgrades and also more frequent clones. If you clone back, you get more efficient in doing that. And it also requires you to be aware of the plugins that you need, right? If you do it twice a year, that Excel sheet that's incomplete and somebody has to run and figure out what it goes, twice a year, nobody cares. If you do that once a month, people start making sure that that list of plugins, that overview is complete. And that if we want to enable another plugin, that it gets added to the list, because otherwise, next month when they run, and they miss an upgrade of the plugins, that becomes difficult. So it's sort of chicken and egg, but I think the more frequent you do it, the more efficient you become in it. And seeing especially what the upgrades with all the Now Assist capabilities that come with Xanadu and after, I think more frequent upgrading plugins also allows you to provide a lot more value to your business stakeholders as well. So that initial investment in doing it more frequently will also show in value. Does that answer the question?
You give us a thumbs up, Graham, if that answers your question. All right, well, now it's
okay, cool.
Okay.
And that also brings us to the next topic, because I spoke about that sort of data-driven decision making. In this case, that the data is very important. You need to have the overview of the plugins that you have. You need to have the overview of all the manual tests that you're doing, the automated tests that you're having, and percentage-wise, how many checks are we still doing manual versus automated. And what we also want to show is enhancing the upgrade process is divided clearly in two, whether that's two moments or being really specific on what is new functionality and what is part of the upgrade, that you keep that separate. Because a lot of times upgrades happen during your normal day-to-day business, right? So developers add new functionality, add more value to your business. So you don't want to stop that for too long, but you want to have clear, if any findings from the testing as well come out, that you say, hey, this is because of the Washington upgrade, or sorry, the Xanadu upgrade, and this is new functionality that our developers built. And of course, ideally, the developers find already any bugs that they have on development, on test, and acceptance. But it's still good for the testers, especially acceptance testing, that you are able to distinguish this is new functionality versus upgrade. Again, here comes the sizing. If you have a full development suite, a good practice is having one environment where you don't deploy the new functionality to test, or one environment where you have, let's say, still on Washington, and you upgrade another environment to Xanadu that you can compare. Hey, was it working in Washington? The new validation. Oh, no, there also wasn't working because we customized something and it's still not working in Xanadu, but we only find out because we test it now, right? Or the other way around. Oh, in Washington it is working, in Xanadu it's not. Let's raise a ticket for ServiceNow support, right? Or find out what the issue is. Enhance the upgrade also means that after upgrading, of course, it's time for a celebration cake, a nice piece of pie, a nice drink. But it's also time to think about the next upgrade. Because probably the lessons learned, and hopefully you don't experience too much of the plane crashes that Britta mentioned. But it's time to write down those lessons learned, do a reflection, and make a plan already for the next upgrade. Because now you have the run book, you have the checklist, and you say, hey, this disaster should have, maybe a lesson learned can be prevented next time if we build a check here. And to be fair, I call it disaster, but I luckily haven't had any upgrades that were really a disaster. But you can imagine tiny improvements in this process can lead you from, let's say, the longest customer I had took over 2 months for an upgrade. They had a big environment, a whole big development suite. I think they had 10 environments. And they were able to reduce that already to half of that. Just by tweaking, thinking about replacing some of the manual testing to automated testing. And also they found out that some of the things in manual testing they were missing. So they added it first as a manual check. Just with every release, they were able to upgrade that. So that is, think about these steps. And you can, of course, do that iteratively from each step. From assess to planning, you can improve the assessment phase, from planning to clone, and etc., etc. But overall, I would say every upgrade that you do, mandatory, have a plan for the next upgrade. How are you going to make that smoother? And I know at Nationale Nederlanden, one of the companies that Ashdus and Dhruv, two MVPs, work at, they were able to reduce the upgrade, I think, to as little as within a week. They were able to upgrade, and they have also a lot of environments just by iteratively enhancing the upgrade. Then talking about upgrade process, what are the timelines? I have mentioned already, they range a bit on your sizing and the amount of customization, technical depth, so there also the tools will help. But what do we do in those timelines with development freeze? And maybe we can use the chat, I'm not sure if that's possible, to share a bit of ideas. What would be a typical development freeze? Would you even do a development freeze? Is there people that continue working while upgrading?
Oh, looks like Javier said that they can do an upgrade in a week, which is pretty exciting. We did used to have a customer who would do a webinar regularly, Jabil, and they're one of the largest companies that you've never heard of. They make computer components, and they were able to actually get their upgrade down to 1 day because they had a extremely rigorous change control process. So every update set was reviewed by the cab before it went into production. And that sounds like a lot of work, but the time you spend up front saves you so much more time later. There's so many areas where this applies, like organizational change management, upgrades, getting your requirements right the first time. But yeah, it's just a real testament to, like if you put that time in the beginning, you're not scrambling later on in the back time. I will also give an example of a customer that I had who we did have a run book for the go live or the upgrade, but the developer forgot to do the first step. So even if you have the checklist or the run book, you have to make sure that you follow it, because we spent a whole day troubleshooting what was wrong, and we finally realized that he hadn't done the first step, and I think it was activating the plugin. So yeah. Those gotchas. So Dennis has put a question out here in the Q&A. He said, is there a feature in the ServiceNow that allows you to lock new configurations for a specific period? For example, can this be enabled on an instance before cloning to prevent configuration overwrites?
Oh, that's a good question. I know that it's not a platform capability, but I know that we've built that for customers. But it's not locking it down as part of a change freeze per se. It's more that you have to do quality checks, and you can only close an update set if that automated testing, I mentioned, maybe I can show you the slide again, with the instance scan. What it also could allow you to do is scan update sets. So what we have built is, I'm not going to advertise it, but you can imagine you can do the same on your instance, have instance scan run on an update set and give it a quality score. And only if it's a certain quality score, it allows you to close the update set. So that could be one thing. And I think The other thing is you're protecting your DTAP suite is all about the process. You need to have a change request in order to, at least in big organizations, but I think it's a good practice overall, a change request to get things from dev to test, acceptance, production. So from those change requests, yeah, you can already see, right? If there's a change freeze, they can close the update set, but the change will not be approved in that period of time. The same with the exams for ServiceNow. There is a blackout period. You cannot take the exam, and people know that. So I think I would say you can build a lot of things around it, but it all comes down to instructing your people and having the segregation of duty, that not the same developer deploys it, even if you only have development and production, or maybe even more importantly, if you only have development and production. If I have built something, I will never be the one that deploys it to production. And then you have at least two pairs of eyes looking into it. And you can imagine if you have that across DTAP, more people will block it. So yes, you can build something for it to automate that blockage. But if you have the right people instructed there, yeah, then in DTAP suite, a lot of people would have missed it in order to put it in production while there's a change freeze.
And you made a really good point there about, if you have the resources to be able to have somebody different from the developer who created the code, have somebody different, move the code, because that's just, like you said, that extra set of eyes that helps ensure that things don't go awry. We did have another question from Pamela. She's asking if we have a recommendation on how to manage manual testing using test management for the upgrade. And if you don't have an answer for that, Willem, I can take that offline to our product person, and I apologize. Some people in the yard and my dog is going nuts.
Okay, no worries. I think for me at least, it filtered it out, the dog. No, I think test management is then really a specific question, right? We can probably take offline indeed.
All right, and then I was trying to run a poll, but it's not working today. So I do have a couple questions for the group, if you will indulge and stay on a little bit longer. One of the things we'd like to know is, what are some of the major obstacles you face when trying to do upgrades? And I see Sachin has already replied, multiple ServiceNow development groups involved for different modules. And he's part of a platform team that manages the upgrades, but can't proceed with upgrade until sign off by all the groups. That's definitely a challenge for larger organizations. Anybody else have any other obstacles you want to bring up? Any other questions anybody wants to raise?
Yeah, maybe we can go into a bit in that question. To have when you have multiple developer teams working, you have a central platform team, and then they have to check to, I think almost sort of, it feels like different silos, right? So at some times, I think a big part of it is down to communication and trust. So that's also why I'm pushing for a lot more automated testing, because if those streams have to validate for themselves, hey, we're safe to upgrade, as opposed to that they trust, hey, previous release, that's also why this line is here, announcing the upgrade, previous release, the central team was able to already do a lot of our automated testing for also our products, so it should be fine to upgrade. Then that sign off should be a lot quicker at least. Then the second thing is think about your platform governance, a central board where you sit together and say, hey, this is the upgrade. Everybody already comes prepared to that meeting. What's new in Xanadu? What's the impact for you? And then make a decision there. And in that board, also think about who have a decision vote and who are at the table just to voice their concerns, right? Not everybody has to approve. I think that can be that you say, hey, there's a few people centralized that approve, and the others can voice their concerns. If you really have a lot of stakeholders, right? It's not if it's 4 or 5 people making decision, but I've seen platforms with a lot of people that needed to give their approval. Then maybe it makes sense to reduce it to a central ring of voting power and then just advisory councils around that.
And Sachin has another question here. During upgrades, random ACLs or system properties are introduced by ServiceNow, which breaks existing functionality. How do we assess the impact? Saying there's not a lot of documentation on this at time. What are the best practice? Minimize the impact, which I mean, obviously you'd have to read the release notes for all of the products that you have in production to see what's happening. I'm not sure if you have other suggestions, Willem.
Yeah, and I think the comment there is also that maybe there's functionality in the release that's undocumented, which of course ServiceNow tries to prevent. So I'm not stating if it's true or false. I'm not going to burn my hands there. But that's also where instance scan can help, right? Another thing when it comes to security is from Washington on and Xanadu even, you have the security analyzer. So make sure whether it's manually or automated that you test your security. And then indeed, it can still be that it's an ACL that ServiceNow introduced. Maybe it was undocumented, but at least the time for you to uncover those things is quicker. And then of course, if you find them, you have the data provided to ServiceNow, they're also quicker to fix it. So I think that's always key, whether it was ServiceNow or customization, uncovering the problem quicker helps you be more in control. So again, having the right data there, the preparation, the tests already there, I think is key. Having said that, I understand security testing is very difficult, but as you see from Washington, Xanadu, ServiceNow is trying to make it easier with the access analyzer and other security tools. Maybe unrelated, but Xanadu, you also have deny ACLs. So that's also cool. If you haven't looked into it, it's another layer of security that you can use.
Sorry. Yeah, there's just one last question from Bhuvana Swari. And I think as a partner, you might have a guidance on this. They're asking, while managing the upgrade for multiple clients, do you have any way to prepare generic release notes to help them understand the new version?
Oh, that's again, as a consultant, it depends.
It's a tough one because all your clients could be using different parts of the platform. I think really the best thing you would probably have to do is just get the release notes for each product that they're using and kind of compile that for them would be the best thing I could come up with.
Yeah, and it comes down to being a preferred advisor as well. So even if all your customers are using IT service management, their maturity on using it might be different. Mm-hmm. So some customers might be ready for Now Assist, the Gen AI capabilities. Some might not, while they're all using IT service management. So for some, I leave out or put it more on the horizon to say, hey, Now Assist is in Xanadu even more expanded, but you're still here, right? You're not at the Now Assist. So having that conversation with your customer, I think that's key, because the generic release notes, they are shared by ServiceNow, right? And you have on the release notes, you have a release notes builder. So that's available for everybody. You can make your own release notes on the ServiceNow website.
Okay, awesome. All right, well, that is all the questions. And I know we started late due to technical difficulties, which I take full responsibility for. That was my issue, so I apologize for that. I thank you all for joining and staying with us. Hope this session was helpful for you. There'll be a post-event survey that you'll receive. So please fill that out, because that really helps us to make sure that we're on target with the topics for these webinars and the speakers and the depth that we go into. And also, if you come up with any other questions, particularly around ATF, Olenka is very happy to engage and answer those for you. So thank you all for coming. And next week we have one on same day on Tuesday for platform owners around upgrades, if you want to join that one or you know anyone else who would. And then tomorrow we have our platform owners roundtable. So if there's anybody on this call who wants to join that, or you know of somebody in your organization and be interested, check out my LinkedIn where I have those posted. So thank you all for joining, and we'll see you next time.
Yeah, thanks everybody.